If you're a BJJ white belt, you need to avoid these 5 things in order to not stall your progress in jiu-jitsu and to avoid embarrassing yourself like I have. These are the top 5 mistakes I've made so far as a BJJ white belt. Mistake number 1 is being a spazzy white belt. Now, there is a big difference between using your asset of strength and athleticism and being a spazzy white belt. So when you use your strength in a technique mindset, as in you're applying your strength strategically in the right time, in the right place, utilizing the right technique, absolutely nothing wrong with that. If anything, it's encouraged. But being a spazzy white belt means that you're just doing everything and anything you can to try and get out of a position or put on a submission that's just not working, or most of the time it involves you trying to bench press your opponent off you and just completely spazzing out. The reason that this is a mistake is if you're just spazzing out and you're not trying to apply the techniques that you're learning, is you're not going to be able to practice them in a live role. You're just going to be spazzing out all the time. So you're not going to really progress as quickly as you probably should be. Now, I'm very guilty of this, so much so that it's earned me the nickname at my gym, Hulk. Try to avoid spazzing out as a white belt because you're probably not going to be doing yourself any favors, and in worst case scenario, you could probably hurt your opponent because you're not really applying any jiu-jitsu technique, you kind of just spazzing out. Mistake number 2. Now, I was very guilty of this, particularly in my first month of training, and that's attacking from inside your opponent's guard. When you're inside your opponent's guard, they technically have the advantage. Your role is to essentially escape that position over submission. Now, the first submission that I learned in jiu-jitsu was the Americana shoulder lock. I saw this submission from every position I was in, including in someone else's closed guard. So I would try to attack this submission any way I can inside someone's closed guard. Now, not only is this going to be exposing your neck, but it's also going to be separating your arms from your body and exposing your arms for attacks like arm bars as well. Now, the general rule of thumb that white belts are taught, like myself, is to keep your arms in close to you and escape from closed guard and advance your position. You want to pass the guard and then advance your position, then you can try to attack things like Americanas. But when you're in someone's closed guard, unless you know what you're doing, which I don't try to go for a submission in your opponent's closed guard. You're not gonna have a good time. Mistake number 3. Now, this is an etiquette one, and that is giving way to higher belts. What I mean by this is if you have 2 groups of people rolling, say you have 2 higher belts and 2 white belts rolling, the general unspoken rule, the law of the mats, is the white belts give way to the higher belts. I'm very guilty still to this day of not always adhering to that rule, because I get so in the zone, I'm so focused on what I'm trying to achieve, I'm so focused on getting the submission or getting the upper hand on my training partner, that I lose situational awareness around me and end up forcing a higher belt or 2 higher belts to move their role out of my way. That shouldn't happen. Mistake number 4, this is a personal one, and I know that white belts are not the only group that are guilty of this, but that is not taking care of your injuries. Personally, I've had 2 specific injuries that I just did not take care of correctly, that I downright ignored. And the first one was a scratch on the back of my head, which ended up turning into a full-blown nasty ass skin infection that took 2 weeks of antibiotics to clear up. I was a bit of an idiot. I didn't take it seriously. It was a bit of mat burn that just grew a life of its own, quite literally. I should have taken care of it, covered it up, washed it out, done all the right things, maybe even taken a couple days off to let it heal. Instead, you know, me being me, I powered through it, got a full-blown skin infection, so thanks very much for that. And the second and most recent injury that I didn't really do justice to was an ankle sprain. So I sprained my ankle. I didn't take much time off training. I was effectively back at training like the following week, and I rolled it again and sprained it even worse, which made it the healing process even longer. In the first instance, just take some time off the mats, because if you take time off the mats in the early days of the injury, you're going to prevent yourself from missing out on even more training in the future. Like I did, I ended up being out for nearly 4 weeks with that bloody ankle sprain because I just didn't take care of it correctly from the outset. And the fifth most embarrassing mistake that I've made as a white belt so far is not shaking the referee's hand first. This one, I had no idea. It was actually pointed out to me by a friend of mine, Jeremy Skinner, when he was reviewing some of my match footage. And he said to me, wait a minute, you didn't shake the ref's hand first. So when you're competing in jiu-jitsu and the referee calls competitors out onto the mat, you're meant to be shaking the referee's hand first before you shake your opponent's hand. Now, this may seem like silly or whatever, but it's just an etiquette thing. It's a sign of respect for the referee. Looking back on it, it seems like common sense now, but whatever. I didn't shake his hand first. I still won the match though, so it didn't come down to a ref's decision, thankfully. But lesson learned there, shake the ref's hand first. So this one goes out to all my white belt friends and even any high belts if you're watching. What's one of the biggest mistakes that you've made as a white belt in jiu-jitsu? Now, I absolutely love reading your responses. I really do learn a lot from reading everyone's responses to the questions, and particularly about etiquette and even fundamentals that maybe I didn't know or that don't pertain particularly to my gym. And I'm sure that everyone that reads the comments gets a lot out of it. So thanks so much for answering the questions and commenting on the video. And if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give a thumbs up to show your support and consider subscribing. New videos every week, just like this one. Thanks for watching.